Hey everyone, I'm Nadine and welcome back to Bookish Nook. Today I am doing my March wrap-up and April TBR. During the month of March, I read 8 books and 1 trade paperback, so let's just dive in. The first book that I read during the month of March was Confess by Colleen Hoover. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Of course, it was absolutely fantastic. The stories, the characters were phenomenal. I expect nothing less from Colleen Hoover, and this delivered exponentially. The artwork inside is absolutely beautiful if you haven't seen it already. But what really surprised me about this book was the ending. I guess the entire book I kind of felt like, yes, this is a Colleen Hoover book, the writing is fantastic, the characters are so real, but I felt like there was something missing, and the ending delivered that and some. It was absolutely fantastic. I would definitely recommend Confess by Colleen Hoover. The second book that I read was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I gave it a 4.5 stars out of 5. I'm sure you guys all know what this is about. It's been kind of hyped up here on BookTube. I really enjoyed it, despite it being a sort of mashup of different young adult books. The Hunger Games definitely is one of them. There were even some lines in this book that actually just felt like they were pulled out of other books. Like, there's a few Hunger Games lines, and there's actually a Star Wars line near the end, which I wrote about in my review on Goodreads, and I put a spoiler tag on it, so if you've read it, definitely go check out the line I'm talking about, because it's definitely near the end. But either way, I am excited to see where this goes. Third book that I read this month was The Shadowhunters Codex by Cassandra Clare and her husband Joshua Lewis. I use the word read very, very loosely because I mostly just skimmed through this book. I ended up giving it a 3 stars because almost 100% of the information in this book we already know. It's all in the other books. There's a few little tidbits that are interesting, and if you wanted a more in-depth look at certain things like Steelies or some demons and stuff, I would point you to this direction, but to only read those passages, not the entire thing. The only thing that really made this book bearable were the sort of notations from Clary, Simon, and Jace. There's a few from Magnus. But either way, it was 3 stars, a kind of useless addition to the world, but it does look beautiful on my shelf. The next book that I read was The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, and this was my second attempt at a Neil Gaiman book, the first being The Ocean at the End of the Lane, and I didn't like it. And sadly to say, I didn't like this one as well. I also gave this one a 3 stars out of 5. And that seems a little high for a book that I didn't like, and that's because Neil Gaiman is a fantastic author, and despite me not liking any of his work so far, I can't deny the fact that he is an amazing author and writer. His prose is absolutely beautiful. His development of the story and his grasp on sort of the world that he's building in is second to none, so the 3 stars is because of that. And the reason why I'm never going to read another Neil Gaiman book is because I do not like the whimsical fantasy kind of story. It's just a personal preference that his books made me realize. So if you do like that, I would definitely recommend Neil Gaiman 100%. But other than that, it's just more of a personal preference. The next book I read was These Broken Stars by Megan Spooner and Amy Kaufman. I gave this a 4.5 stars out of 5. I really, really enjoyed it. I went into this book expecting sort of a space adventure because that's what it's described as, Titanic and space, and I got something else, which isn't a bad thing. I really enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting the mystery component in this book whatsoever, so that was a great addition to the story. The writing is blends seamlessly between the 2 authors, which I was a little concerned about at first, but you can't tell that it's written by 2 authors, which is fantastic. The main character annoyed me a lot, but she does go through a lot of development, which is fantastic to see, and the main protagonist was he was interesting. He had a very great backstory, and sort of just his interactions with the world were fantastic. So I would definitely recommend this book, although I do have a question to the viewers who have read this book. Is the second book, The Shattered World, worth picking up? Because I know it doesn't follow these 2 main characters, it's sort of like companion novels. So is it worth picking up? Because I'm not really sure if I want to. The next book that I read was All Lined Up by Cora Carmack. I ended up giving this a 4.5 stars out of 5. This is a new adult book about a girl who's looking for a fresh start at a university, of course, sort of the typical storyline, except what makes this book unique is that there is a sports aspect to it, and that is football. And there's sort of like I am not supposed to fall in love with you because I'm trying to distance myself from this, and I'm not supposed to fall in love with you because you're the coach's daughter kind of thing. It was fantastic. I loved every second of it. I would definitely recommend it if you're looking to read some new adult, and if you are not too on board with all the sexual scenes. This book has very few sexual scenes. I mean, they're down to a very minimum, so definitely check this out. I cannot wait to read the next in the series. I also did a video review. If you want some more in-depth knowledge into what I thought about the book, I'll leave that link down below. The second to last book that I read this month was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. This book is a very mature, an eye-opening book. It deals with a lot of sort of mature subjects, so if you aren't okay with that, I would definitely steer you away from this. But Toni Morrison's writing is absolutely poetic, flawless, and beautiful. She has this knack for making the reader see something from 2 different perspectives, and sort of makes you not rethink your original thoughts about something that happened, but definitely make you see it in a different light. Not that she's making what the action did okay or bearable, it's just a different light, and it's a very unique thing. I've never read anything like that, so I really enjoyed this. It follows some young black girls who are sort of growing up in a world where, of course, white beauty, so the tall, blonde, blue eye woman is considered desirable and beautiful, and obviously they do not have those characteristics, so they're kind of growing up in a world like that, and you follow them. But what's interesting about this book is that you do not follow them specifically throughout the book. You follow them in the beginning, and then Toni Morrison opens up the world by giving a chapter to each of the people who are connected to the little girls, and then the world just sort of expands. So it's not really like a timeline kind of book. It's sort of, there's a moment, and then the moment is expanded on, and it's more of a story that goes backwards rather than forward, because you are understanding all the characters' backstories. So if you can deal with sort of mature subjects, I would definitely recommend this. You won't be disappointed. The last book of the month I read was After by Anna Todd, and let me just say, I really enjoyed this book, and I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. I couldn't give it a 5 because of all the controversy. Hardin and Tessa's relationship is definitely not healthy, and there are some abusive components to it, especially if you're looking at more of an educational list of triggers or clues to look out for an emotional abuser or an abuser. Hardin hits almost all of them. So I think people cast this book and other books like this aside too fast because of just this emotional relationship, and I think they forget that these books can be an educational tool to people reading it, you know, young girls, older women, etc., about an abusive relationship and what to look out for in their own relationships. I mean, what would you rather have someone experience, an abusive relationship in real life or through a book? And hopefully maybe this book can prevent someone being sucked into an abusive relationship like Tessa is. So I think people cast it aside too quickly. I did really enjoy this book. This book captivated me and left me in a book hangover, and I am still in a book hangover, so I have to get the second book before I can read anything else. It was definitely fantastic, and just their relationship and their dysfunction just drew me in like no other book. I would compare my experience reading this book to my experience reading Beautiful Disaster by Jamie Maguire, which I absolutely loved. So I would only recommend this book to people who have an open mind and aren't so judgmental, just because of the abusive relationship. Because if you cannot get past the first, 200 pages or so, because the abusive relationships surfaces pretty quickly, you will definitely not get through the rest, because there are some moments where it gets pretty bad. So I'd only recommend it to people who are okay reading these types of relationships. The last thing I read this month was volume 2 of Miss Marvel, called Generation Y by Alphona and Wyatt, I think it is. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It was fantastic. Miss Marvel is an amazing character, and the writers and the artist are doing such an amazing job with it that I cannot wait to see where the story goes. If you're looking to get into comics, I think this is a great place, because she's pretty new to the Marvel universe, so there isn't any backstory you're missing or any sort of big events that you're missing, so just jump on in and enjoy the ride. So as I mentioned earlier, I want to read the second book to After by Anna Todd, which is After We Collided. I'm going to be getting that soon, so I cannot wait to read it. The next book that I want to read is Being Me by Lisa Renee Jones, which is the second book to If I Were You. This is a 50 Shades-esque story about this woman who finds a storage locker with a mysterious diary in it, and the diary outlines this woman's sort of sexual encounters with this man, but they start to turn dark and creepy and she disappears. So our main character immerses herself in this woman's world to find out what happened to her. The last book left on a cliffhanger, so I cannot wait to dive into this. The second to last book that I am planning to read is Archetype by M.D. Waters. This is I bought this so long ago, I'm having a hard time remembering what it's about. I think it's just sort of like a psychological thriller. It's a duology, so I can't wait to get this. The last book that I plan on reading this month is a book I got for review, and that is Beautiful Lies by Charlotte, I think it is. This book follows a young woman who has spent the last year of her life falling in love with someone named Taylor. Except Taylor doesn't exist and she already has a boyfriend. So it's a new adult, I think, mystery type book. I'm really excited to read it. It's also, I think, 99 cents if you pre-order it, so if that sounds interesting to you, definitely go check that out. Pretty much what I plan on reading this month and what I've read, so let me know down below what you've read during the month of March. Thanks for watching. Bye.